Hello and welcome to the Learning Love Podcast, brought to you by the Learning Love Foundation, helping people transform how they love, live, and lead. I'm your host, Dr. Mark A. Hicks, and I want to thank you for joining us today as we spend some time learning love.
Love is the answer. Now all we have to do is explore all the questions, and today's question is a tough one. What do we do when we are heartbroken? When we are deeply disappointed? When we have that heartache because our relationships are not going the way we want? Things are not working out the way we thought they would. And this can be any number of scenarios. It can be a dating relationship where you thought this was the one. You thought this was the real thing. And then it didn't work out for whatever reason. It could have been your decision or it could have been the other person's decision to end it. Doesn't matter. It hurts. It is painful to go through that breakup. Then, of course, there's marriage or a long-term romantic relationship where you are living together and you have kids, you have a mortgage, you have all these legal entanglements, and then you divorce. And that is just a nightmare scenario. It is horrible to go through a divorce. And when we go through those things, it is heartbreaking. And so many people that haven't been through it don't really quite get it because we sometimes are told, well, it's just too easy to divorce. People aren't committed enough. Our great grandparents didn't divorce. And why are we divorcing so much today? Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. First of all, women didn't have the option to divorce in your great grandparents' day, but that's a different show. That's a different topic. But one of the things that we do not seem to always understand if we haven't been through it is a heartbreak, even if you wanted that relationship to end, even if you were the one who chose to end it, because you are losing that life that you thought you were going to have. You're losing the image of who you thought you were in this world with this person, in this family. You are losing the life you worked at, wanted, sought, and thought you would have at one point in your life, and now that is all gone. The image of what you were going to be, how you were going to grow old in this life, has now ended, and you have to learn who you are again, of what your life is going to look like. It's an incredible, painful thing to go through, even if you chose to end it, even if you wanted to divorce, even if it's a relief to have that divorce because you were in an abusive relationship or some such thing. It's still very painful. It is heartbreaking to go through. And then there's other scenarios. Maybe you don't divorce. Maybe you have decided to give this another chance, but you are deeply disappointed in your spouse or partner. You are deeply disappointed in what this relationship has become. You are heartbroken at the stuff you've been through and the things you have faced as a couple and how badly that has gone. It is heartbreaking to look back at your history of all the things you hoped would be that are not, that this is not the relationship you set out to create. And now you're in a position of, okay, we're not going to divorce. We're going to give this another chance. We're going to reset and try this again. Hopefully you're doing that with therapy. You're doing that with a marriage counselor, with a relationship coach. You're getting help. Otherwise, you're probably going to end up in the same habits you've been in before. We tend to always revert back to what we thought was working at the time or what we've been in a habit of doing. But even when you are in that place, that you are starting over to try this again, you're not going to end the relationship, but you are still heartbroken. You're still grieving. You're still hurting. You're still in pain because you are not living in the relationship that you worked hard for, that you wanted, that you thought was going to be. And now you have the monumental task of starting over. I had someone one time that was contemplating divorce. It was a couple trying to decide, and they were in a terrible situation. They were obviously not in a good place in their relationship because they were on the brink of divorce, but they were trying to decide, do we give this one more chance? And I told them, I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you whether or not you should give this another try or not. But I can tell you this, either way will be the hardest thing you've ever done. Going through a divorce will be the hardest thing you have done. They'd been married for a lot of years, had a lot of property together, had children together. This is a horrible thing to go through. And I told them this. I said, you're going to go through the hardest thing you've ever done if you decide to divorce. If you decide to rebuild this broken marriage, it will be the hardest thing you've ever done. There is no easy road from here. When you are in a place where you are on the brink of divorce, but you might want to try it again, there is no easy road from that place. You've got two options. You divorce or you take a shot at rebuilding a broken relationship. Both will be the hardest thing you've ever done. So pick the one you're willing to work at. Pick the one that you are willing to put your all into, your body, mind, and soul, to put everything you've got into making that happen. And doing it right, either divorcing as amicably as you can, be a decent person as much as you can, and do it the right way, and that will be hard. Or put your all into getting help and getting their relationship back on track. This particular couple chose to give it another shot, and they're still married to this day. This has been years ago. They were able to turn it around, but they had to work at it. And that's where we are so many times. Even if we are giving it another chance, we are still hurting. We are still heartbroken. And it doesn't even just apply to relationships in things like marriage. It can be friendships. It can even be jobs. Maybe we are devastated and heartbroken because we've lost a job. And it wasn't just a paycheck. It was a career, maybe even a calling. This is something we truly thought we identified with in our lives, and that this is who we are. This is what we contribute in this world. And now it's gone for whatever reason, that the job is no longer part of our life, and that can be heartbreaking. So what do we do when we are heartbroken? Here's the thing. Regardless of the scenario, and I've laid out, 5 different scenarios here, I think, that we could go through that break our heart, that cause us deep pain and disappointment. All of them are vastly different scenarios, but regardless of which one we are in, the cure, the treatment, the path forward is always the same. Okay, it's always the same. So regardless of what kind of struggle you're having, of what is causing that heartbreak, it's the same path forward. I'm going to give you 2 things that everyone needs to do in a time of heartache, for that heartache, for that heartbreak, for that pain to become a teacher, to actually help you move forward better than you were before, to start over wiser than you were before. When we understand how to move forward and we put these practices into place, you're going to move forward from that heartbreak, and the heartbreak will become a teacher so that you move forward with greater wisdom. Now, the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to grieve. This is something that we tend to try to avoid in our society, and particularly guys, men are the worst about this. Okay, women by stereotype are a little better. I'm always cautious about these kind of things because you can't stereotype people. Everybody's different. But in general, women tend to be a little better at this portion because society allows them to cry, and society allows them to talk about their feelings. And that's really what grief comes down to. There's other aspects, but if you boil it down to its big components, grief is about crying and talking. And you really only need one of those. You need to be really good at one of those. Both are helpful, but you need to be good at one of those. Crying and grieving are the major components of grief. And so in general, stereotyping a bit, women tend to be better at this because generally they will cry, and they will also get with their friends and talk it out. They will tell the story. They'll say what happened. They'll say how heartbroken they are. They'll share their feelings with their friends, and have that support around them. Again, by stereotype, men tend to not want to cry, and will also be more hesitant to talk about it with other people. They may say, "Hey, me and my wife are getting divorced," and their guy friends will say, "Oh, that sucks, man. Let me pick up the tab for our lunch," and that'll be about it. Again, I'm stereotyping. I want to be cautious here because that's not always how it goes, but we have to learn to grieve. Life is going to hurt. Life is going to cause us problems sometimes. No one gets through this life without scars. We're going to have some heartache along the way. We're going to have some deep disappointments along the way. And the way to come back from that, the comeback story, is always grief. It's a way of processing those emotions, talking through them, get help with that. I always come back to this. Get a therapist, counselor, pastor, coach, someone that you can talk to. If you don't have people in your life that you feel comfortable talking to, professionals are a really good option. Even if you do have friends to talk to, professionals are a great option. But at least find friends and family members that you can talk this out, that you can get that out. And I know people say, "Well, I don't know what talking's going to do." And I always say, don't knock it till you've tried it. Our brains and our bodies have a way of processing things when we cry and when we talk. You don't have to understand it for it to work. If you say, "I don't know how talking is going to help," you don't have to know how talking is going to help, but do it anyway. Talking these things out, our brains and our bodies respond to grief. All right. So find ways to grieve, find ways to express that emotion. There's other ways if you just are not a person that can cry. There are other ways to express emotion. It may be through art, it may be through journaling, it may be through a lot of things. But find a way to express that grief. That's step number one. That keeps our heart open. That keeps us coming back from that heartache. Because if we're not careful, we'll build walls, we'll put up emotional barriers trying to protect ourselves. I don't want to hurt like this anymore, so I'm going to protect myself in the future and not get close to anybody. That sounds like a solution, but it's not. That's just going to hurt us more in the long run when we don't have relationships in the future. Having relationships that hurt us are very painful. Not having relationships where we are chronically lonely is also painful. And so choosing one pain for another is not going to help. Learn how to grieve to come back. That's our comeback story. Then, as part of the grief process, or maybe later on down the road, we need to do some self-reflection. We need to think about, did I miss some warning signs? Did I ignore some red flags? Is there a way I could have handled this differently, that if I see the same problems emerging again in a future relationship, maybe I can handle this differently and have a different outcome? Now, this is not about guilt. This is not about beating yourself up. This is not about pointing fingers of blame. This is about making sure you don't make the same mistakes over and over again. And that's one of the problems. Is it's so easy when we get hurt to blame the person that left, or to blame the person that caused us to leave, or blame that significant other that we no longer have a relationship with, or that we're trying to build that relationship back with that person, but we constantly are blaming them. We're finding fault with them. Okay, it can be 99% their fault. 99% their fault. That 1% that was your fault is still important. It's still important to have that self-reflection and think, one, I'm going to find a better person that doesn't have 99% of the problem. I'm going to have a higher quality person in my life. That's self-reflection number one. If truly do have someone that it was 99% their fault because they were totally an abusive person, well, that's lesson number one. We have to have quality people in our life that will love us and treat us well. And you deserve that. You deserve to be selective on who you have relationships with. The second thing, though, is that 1% that you can say, okay, it was mostly their fault, but I could have handled this differently. Then handle that different in the future. Commit to that. Pay attention. Improve on that. That kind of self-reflection, again, is not about guilt. Everybody makes mistakes. This is not about beating yourself up. But having that self-reflection means that when you come into the next relationship, you're coming in wiser. You're coming in with a deeper understanding of what a healthy relationship is, because you have grieved and you have looked at that relationship through the lens of what could I do different? What could I handle in a different way? And what decisions could I make that are better decisions in the future? If you know how to grieve and you have some self-reflection, that's not about guilt, but it is about determining to make better choices. You're going to be wiser after that heartbreak, after that hardship, after that breakup, or when you are trying to rebuild a relationship. You are going to do so in a manner which has more wisdom, more understanding, a deeper feel for what a healthy relationship is. And so learn to grieve, do some self-reflection, do that openly with people around you that know you well, that can tell you the truth and will do so with love. And finding that help, that professional help when you need it, can be absolutely critical in both of those things, in grief and in self-reflection. You go through that, then heartache becomes a real teacher. And you don't have to then go through that same heartache over and over and over again in your life, which is the true tragedy. Everyone gets hurt along the way. Learn from it so you don't have to keep going through that again and again, because you're continually making the same mistakes. You do this, then the heartache is going to be a great teacher. And that's my thoughts today as we are looking to build the healthy, happy, thriving relationships that we all want and we need and we deserve. I want to invite you to go to learninglovefoundation.com. The Learning Love Foundation sponsors this show. Please go to learninglovefoundation.com. You'll find a lot of stuff there that's happening in our organization, and you'll find links to buy my book, Learning Love, Building a Life That Matters and Healthy Relationships That Last. I would love you to pick up your copy. Thank you so much for listening. Until next week, love well, everyone.